Stepsister stole my car and wrecked it, but Dad defended her. So I left, but now she wants to move with me. So yeah, my name's Laura, and when I was 13, my life pretty much turned into a mess. I guess it started with my parents' divorce. Not that I was surprised by it or anything. I mean, they were always arguing, shouting at each other over the dumbest stuff. My dad was this guy who always had something to complain about. And my mom? Well, she didn't have the patience to deal with him. So the split was inevitable, I think. At first, I thought maybe things would calm down after the divorce, like no more fights, just peace and quiet. But nah, things got a lot weirder. Fast. They agreed to split custody of me, weekdays with my dad and weekends with my mom, since she had this demanding job. So I'm bouncing back and forth between their houses, and it's lonely, man. Being an only kid, I didn't have anyone to talk to about how messed up everything felt. But then, 3 months after the divorce, my dad hits me with this announcement. He's got news, big news. He's getting remarried and he's moving in this woman, Mary, along with her daughter, Jessica. He's acting like it's the best thing ever, like I should be happy to suddenly have a new sister. I remember sitting there, just nodding along. But inside, I was screaming. I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't want a new mom, and I definitely didn't want some stranger invading my space. So, I meet them. Mary seemed all right at first, kind of cold, but not rude. But Jess? She's like this perfect, shiny 14-year-old, all smiles and sweetness. At least that's what everyone else saw. The first couple of weeks, I was trying to be nice, get along. But it became clear real quick that this wasn't going to be like some Disney movie where we all magically get along and become one big happy family. Nope. Jess was the favorite right off the bat, and it sucked. Like, on her birthday, my dad threw her this big party with cake, decorations, the whole deal. And I'm just standing there like, what the hell? Because my birthday was 2 months before that. And guess what I got? Nothing. Not even a happy birthday from him. I'm not exaggerating. He legit forgot. But for Jess? Oh, she was the princess, and I was just there. It didn't stop there either. My dad started driving her to school every day, which was just another slap in the face because I still had to take the bus like some random nobody. And then, if I ever did something wrong, like literally anything, my dad would be on me in a second, criticizing me for not being like Jessica, who's always so well behaved. Yeah, right. I remember one time I came home from school, and Jess had borrowed my favorite sweater without asking. And when I told her not to touch my stuff again, she ran to my dad, fake crying, acting like I was being mean to her. What did my dad do? Took her side, of course, saying I needed to learn to share. It was ridiculous. I mean, this girl was constantly taking my things, makeup, clothes, even my school supplies, and somehow I was always the one who ended up being the problem. The worst part? My dad wasn't even trying to hide the favoritism. It was like he had completely forgotten I existed. Like, I was no longer his daughter, just this annoying person who was in the way. Jess was the perfect one who could do no wrong, while I was invisible unless I was being criticized. It wasn't just my dad either. Mary never missed a chance to make me feel small, either ignoring me or lecturing me about how I should be more like her daughter. By the time I was 16, I was pretty much checked out of my family. I stopped trying to bond with them or be part of their happy little world because it was clear that I didn't fit. So I focused on myself. I got a job, started saving money, and after a while, I managed to buy my own car. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was mine, and it felt like the only thing in my life I actually had control over. My mom chipped in to help me buy it, but I was covering all the insurance, gas, and other expenses myself. My dad didn't offer to help, of course. Why would he? He was too busy paying for everything Jess wanted. Honestly, I didn't care, though. Having that car was my little bit of freedom, something that was just mine. But then, Jess started to notice. She'd wrecked her own car a few weeks after I got mine. Big surprise, right? So now she was bugging me to borrow mine all, oh, Laura, I really need it just for today. I shut her down every time. I wasn't stupid. I knew she didn't give a damn about my stuff and would probably trash it just like hers. But she kept pushing. I stood my ground, though, telling her flat out no, every time. Then one day, I came home from school, and my car wasn't in the driveway. My heart sank immediately because I knew what had happened. Sure enough, Jess had taken my car without asking, and when she got back later that night, around 10 p.m., the front of it was all smashed up. She didn't even apologize, just handed me the keys like nothing had happened. I stormed into the house, ready to explode, and went straight to my dad. I thought finally he's going to see how messed up this is and back me up. Right? Wrong. Instead, I got a lecture about being selfish. Selfish because I didn't want to share the car I had worked for, paid for, and maintained on my own. He didn't care that Jess had stolen it and wrecked it. Nope, it was my fault for not letting her borrow it in the first place. Mary chimed in too, of course, like it was some sort of family gang up. They all turned on me, making me feel like I was crazy for even being mad. Jess? She sat there, acting all innocent, like she didn't just steal and wreck my car. I was furious. I could feel my blood boiling, but there was no point arguing anymore. So the next day, I packed up my things and moved to my mom's place. My dad didn't even try to stop me. He didn't care. I was just gone from his life. And that was it. 5 years went by without a word from him or Jess. Not one phone call, not one text, nothing. But honestly, I didn't miss them. So fast forward 5 years. I'm in college, living my own life, and things are going pretty good. I mean, I'm not rich or anything, but I'm making it work. I got a place off campus, a job that pays the bills, and friends who actually care about me, unlike my so-called family. Life finally felt like it was mine. Then, out of nowhere, I start getting these calls. At first, it was just one or two, and I didn't recognize the number, so I ignored them. I'm not the type to answer calls from numbers I don't know. Too many scammers out there, you know? But then, the calls kept coming. Same number, over and over again. I was like, what the hell? So I finally answer, thinking maybe it's important or something. And guess who it is? Jessica. Freaking Jessica. I hadn't heard from her in 5 years. 5 years of nothing from her or my dad. The second I heard her voice, my stomach dropped. Like, what could she possibly want after all this time? She didn't even sound like she cared about not speaking to me for years. She just jumped right into it like we'd talked yesterday. No big deal. Hey, Laura, it's been so long. How have you been? I was kind of stunned at first. I didn't know whether to laugh or hang up. I decided to just be polite for the moment because I was curious about what she wanted. No way she was calling out of the blue just to chat, right? I'm fine, I guess. What's up, I said, keeping it short because I wasn't in the mood for small talk. She starts going on and on about how she's moving to my city for a new job or something. Apparently, she's had a rough couple of months, lost her place, and now she's relocating. I'm just sitting there listening, thinking, why are you telling me all this? And then, she hits me with it. So I was wondering if I could crash at your place for a while, just until I get settled. I heard from Dad that you live there, and I figured we could help each other out. I almost dropped my phone. First off, Dad was still apparently keeping tabs on me, which was creepy enough, but the fact that Jess just assumed I'd let her move in after 5 years of silence? I couldn't believe the nerve. It wasn't like we were close before. She ruined my car, and now she thinks I'm just going to welcome her with open arms? I took a second before answering because I didn't want to just yell no and hang up, even though that's what I felt like doing. I don't know, Jess. I mean, I don't really have room for anyone else here, and I've been managing on my own for a while now, I said, trying to sound as calm as possible, but inside I was raging. She didn't even hesitate. Oh, I won't take up much space. I don't even have much stuff with me, and I won't be able to pay rent right away. But you've been living there on your own, so I figured it wouldn't be a big deal. She said it like it was the most normal thing in the world. Like I should just be cool with the fact that she expected to live rent-free in my place. It wasn't even a request at that point. It was more like she'd already made up her mind and was just waiting for me to say yes. But here's the thing. I've worked hard to get where I am. I don't have a lot, but I've been doing everything on my own. There's no way I'm letting someone who wrecked my car and hasn't spoken to me in years just waltz back into my life and take advantage of me. I'm sorry, Jess, but that's not going to work for me, I said, finally just putting it out there. I've got my own stuff going on, and I'm not really in a position to have anyone else staying here right now. I thought that would be the end of it, but of course, she wasn't done. Laura, come on, it's just for a little while. I won't be any trouble, I promise. I just need a place to crash. You're my sister, you can't just leave me hanging like this. I could hear the frustration in her voice, but that didn't make me feel any more guilty. If anything, it made me mad. Now, I was her sister? Where was all this family talk when she and my dad made my life hell? Where was she when I moved out and never heard from them again? I took a deep breath. Look, I'm sorry you're going through a tough time, but I can't help you. You'll have to find another place. I'm sure there are other options. Her tone changed real quick. She went from fake sweet to irritated in a second. I can't believe you're being like this. I thought we were past all that old stuff. You've been doing fine, and it's not like you don't have space. This isn't fair, Laura. I had to laugh at that. Fair? Since when was life ever fair for me? I was done. I wasn't going to let her guilt me into this. Jess, I don't owe you anything. I've been taking care of myself just fine without you or Dad, and I'm not going to change that now. I'm sorry if you're struggling, but that's not my responsibility. There was a long pause, and I could tell she was fuming. But honestly, I didn't care. I'd spent enough years bending over backward for people who didn't care about me, and I wasn't about to start doing it again. Well, thanks for nothing, she snapped before hanging up on me, and just like that, the conversation was over. I sat there for a minute, just staring at my phone. I felt a weird mix of emotions, relief, anger, disbelief, but mostly I just felt tired. Like, why did I even have to deal with this? I had built my own life, moved on from the mess of my childhood, and now they were trying to drag me back into it. But at least I stood my ground. That's one thing I've learned over the years. If you don't stick up for yourself, people will walk all over you. And I'm done being walked on. Update 1. So after the whole mess with Jessica, I figured things would go quiet again, like they had been for the past 5 years. I was actually kind of relieved after I told her no. I didn't feel bad about it because honestly, she didn't deserve my help after everything. But life doesn't just let you move on that easy, right? It was a few days after the whole Jessica thing, and I was just chilling, trying to get some schoolwork done, when my phone rang again. This time, it wasn't an unknown number. It was my dad. Yeah, my dad, who hadn't bothered to contact me once in 5 years. I stared at the screen for a second, kind of frozen, because I honestly didn't expect him to call me. Ever. A bunch of thoughts rushed through my head. Maybe he was calling to apologize, or maybe he had finally realized how badly he treated me. I don't know. I guess part of me was still holding out hope that he would call, just to say, "Hey, how are you? I miss you," or something like that. So stupidly, I answered. "Hello," I said, trying to keep it neutral because I wasn't sure what was coming. "Laura," he said in that serious, annoyed tone he always used, like he was about to lecture me. Right then, I knew this wasn't going to be a nice conversation. "Hi, Dad," I replied, already feeling the tension building. "I heard from Jessica," he said, and immediately I could feel the heat rising in my chest. Of course, he was calling because of her. "Oh yeah?" I said, trying not to let the frustration leak into my voice. He sighed, the kind of sigh that made it sound like I was the problem here. "She told me you refused to help her. She needed a place to stay, and you just turned her away. How could you do that to your sister?" My sister. He actually had the nerve to call her that. I hadn't heard from him in years, and now he was coming at me, accusing me of being selfish because I didn't let the girl who wrecked my car and ignored me for half a decade crash at my place. I could barely believe it. "Dad," I said, trying to stay calm even though I was boiling inside. "Jessica and I haven't spoken in 5 years. She took my car without asking, wrecked it, and you didn't even care. You didn't even check on me after I moved out. Now she suddenly needs a place to stay, and I'm just supposed to forget everything and let her move in? You're still holding on to that?" he snapped, like I was being unreasonable for remembering the whole car incident. "That was years ago, Laura. She's your family. You need to get over it." Get over it? Seriously? It wasn't just about the car. It was about being ignored, being treated like I didn't matter for years, while he doted on Jess like she was his real daughter. I wasn't going to let him twist this around and make it seem like I was the one in the wrong. "Dad, it's not just about the car. You and Jessica made my life hell back then. You never cared about me unless I was in trouble or being criticized. I'm not going to let someone who's treated me like crap for years just walk back into my life because now they need something." There was a pause on the line, and for a second I thought maybe I had finally gotten through to him. Maybe he would see things from my perspective for once. But nope. Instead, he exploded. "You're so selfish," he yelled. "All these years, I thought you'd grow up and learn how to be part of a family, but you're just as inconsiderate as ever. Jessica needed you, and you turned your back on her. What kind of person does that?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was selfish? The guy who hadn't spoken to me in years, who never once checked to see if I was okay after I moved out, was now calling me selfish because I didn't want to let his golden child mooch off me? It was like I was living in some kind of twisted alternate reality. "Dad, you have no idea what my life has been like for the past 5 years," I said, my voice shaking now because I was so angry. "You've never even asked. You didn't care when I left. You didn't care when I struggled to get by on my own, and now you suddenly want to lecture me about family? You don't get to do that." He went quiet for a moment, but I knew he wasn't done. I could almost picture him pacing around trying to come up with something to say that would make me feel like the bad guy. "You're going to regret this one day," he said, his voice low but still full of anger. "When you realize you pushed your family away and there's no one left to help you, you'll see how wrong you are. I'm disappointed in you, Laura. I really am." That was it. That was the breaking point for me. I'd spent years trying to figure out why my dad didn't love me the way he loved Jessica, why he treated me like I was a burden instead of his daughter. But in that moment, I realized I didn't need his approval anymore. I didn't need to keep trying to make him see my worth. If he was disappointed in me, that was his problem, not mine. I'm done, Dad, I said, my voice steady now. If you want to be disappointed in me for standing up for myself, then fine. But I'm not going to apologize for not letting someone who's been nothing but toxic into my life again. You and Jessica made your choices. Now I'm making mine. There was silence on the other end, and I knew he wasn't going to apologize. That wasn't in his nature. Instead, he did what he always did, hung up on me without another word. Just like that, the conversation was over, and so was my relationship with him. For good this time. I sat there for a while, just staring at my phone, trying to process everything. It was hard, you know? No matter how bad things were, a part of me still wanted to believe that my dad would come around eventually, that maybe we could have a real father-daughter relationship someday. But after that call, I knew it wasn't going to happen. I wasn't sad, though. Not really. More like relieved. Like I could finally stop hoping for something that was never going to be. I had my own life now, and I didn't need his approval to be happy. I was free. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could actually move on. Update 2. So, a little context before diving into this. My birthday's never really been a big deal. At least, not since I was a kid. Growing up, it was always kind of forgotten or brushed off, especially after Jessica showed up and took over the spotlight. But I'd gotten used to it. These days, I didn't expect much. Maybe a couple of texts from friends, a casual dinner or something. But this year? Well, this year was different. It started like a normal day. I woke up, checked my phone, saw a couple of happy birthday messages from some close friends, and went about my day. I wasn't planning anything special, just chilling at home and maybe treating myself to a little takeout later. You know, something low-key. Then my phone buzzed again, and I saw the name on the screen. It was my dad. Yeah, my dad calling me on my birthday. After 5 years of silence, after everything that had happened with Jessica, after the blow-up call we had a few days ago, now he was calling me. I stared at the phone for a second like, what does he want now? Part of me didn't want to answer. I mean, I figured it'd just be more drama, right? But I don't know. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was some tiny part of me hoping that for once he was going to wish me a happy birthday or maybe even apologize. So yeah, I answered. Hey, I said, keeping it short, trying not to sound too eager or annoyed. Laura, he started, his voice way too formal, like he was getting ready for a business call. I've been thinking about our last conversation. Great. Here we go, I thought. He's going to double down on everything again. But what he said next caught me off guard. Listen, it's your birthday, and I know we've had our differences. I just want to say, happy birthday. For a split second, I didn't even know how to react. I mean, this was the first time in years he'd acknowledged my birthday at all, let alone called me. It wasn't some heartfelt, tear-jerking apology or anything, but it was something. Thanks, I replied, a little confused. I wasn't expecting to hear from you. There was this awkward silence for a moment, like he didn't know what to say next. I could almost picture him sitting there, trying to figure out how to keep the conversation going without getting into the mess from before. So, how are you doing? He asked, and it sounded so forced. Like, I could tell he wasn't really interested in how I was doing. It was more like he was just going through the motions, ticking boxes in his head. I'm good, I said, not wanting to dive into anything too deep. I didn't really trust where this was going, but I figured I'd play along for now. Just, school, work, same old stuff. Another pause. Then he finally said what I knew was coming. Jessica told me you were pretty harsh with her the other day, he said, his voice shifting back to that serious, almost condescending tone he used when he thought I was being unreasonable. I don't understand why you're still holding on to all that anger. And there it was. I should have known better. Of course, this wasn't just a birthday call. This was him trying to patch things up between me and Jessica, as if all the years of crap she put me through didn't matter. Like I was the one who needed to make amends. Dad, I said, keeping my voice as calm as I could, even though I could feel my frustration building again. It's not about anger. It's about boundaries. I've moved on from everything that happened, but that doesn't mean I'm just going to let Jessica walk back into my life like nothing happened. You can't expect me to just forget everything. You need to let go of the past, he said, like he hadn't even heard a word I'd said. She's trying to move forward, and you should too. This isn't what family does. We're supposed to support each other. I could feel my blood boiling at this point. I had spent years trying to get him to support me, and now he was acting like I was the one who had failed the family. It was like he had completely rewritten history in his head, where Jessica was the victim and I was the villain. Dad, I did support her, I shot back, finally letting some of my frustration out. For years, I put up with everything she and Mary threw at me. I was the one who had to deal with being ignored, pushed aside, and treated like crap. And now, when I finally stand up for myself, I'm the bad guy? How is that fair? There was this long pause, and I thought maybe I had gotten through to him. Maybe he'd finally see things from my side. But nope. He just sighed, like he was tired of having to deal with me. You're making this so much harder than it needs to be, Laura, he said, and I could hear the frustration in his voice now. Jessica's your sister. You need to act like it. And that's when I realized he was never going to get it. No matter what I said, no matter how many times I explained it, he was always going to take Jessica's side. She was the daughter he chose, and I was the one he put up with. I am acting like it, I said, my voice steady but cold. I'm just acting like the sister she deserves. You can't force me to forgive her just because it's easier for you. I've moved on, and you need to do the same. There was another silence, and this time it was heavy, like he didn't know what to say next, or maybe he just realized he wasn't going to win this one. Fine, he finally said, his voice clipped. But don't come crying to me when you realize you've burned every bridge you have left. And with that, he hung up. I sat there for a minute, staring at my phone, trying to process what had just happened. I wasn't even mad at that point, just done. Done with trying to get my dad to see me. Done with hoping for something that was never going to happen. It wasn't the birthday I expected, but maybe it was the one I needed, because now I knew for sure. My dad was never going to change, and I didn't need him to. I was fine on my own. Fine on my Update 3. So after that birthday call from my dad, I really thought I was done with them. I mean, it was pretty clear he wasn't interested in actually hearing me or understanding anything from my side. I had drawn my line in the sand, and I was ready to move on for good, or at least that's what I thought. But life always seems to throw one more thing at you when you least expect it, right? And this time it came in the form of another call. But not from my dad. This time it was from my mom. Now my relationship with my mom has always been kinda distant. She wasn't really involved in the whole mess with my dad and Jessica because, well, she had her own stuff going on. Her job kept her super busy, and honestly, she never seemed to want to get involved. She was more of a you handle your own problems type of person. So when she called, I wasn't sure what to expect. We hadn't really talked about any of the drama that had been happening recently, and I figured maybe she was just calling to check in or ask about school. Hey, Mom, I answered, trying to sound casual, even though I was a little on edge after everything that had been happening. Hi, Laura, she replied, her voice sounding more serious than usual. I wanted to talk to you about something. It's about your dad and Jessica. Here we go again, I thought. Yeah, I said, already bracing myself for whatever was coming next. I know things have been rough between you and them, she started, but your dad called me yesterday. He's really worried about you, Laura. He thinks you've been shutting everyone out. I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Worried about me? That was rich, coming from a guy who hadn't spoken to me in 5 years, except to yell at me for not letting Jessica move in. Mom, I'm not shutting everyone out, I said, trying to stay calm. I just don't want to deal with people who only care about me when they need something. Dad's only calling because Jessica wants something, and I'm not playing that game anymore. I get that, she said, in that way people do when they clearly don't get it. But family is family, Laura. You can't just cut them out of your life forever. At some point, you're going to need them. I couldn't believe she was saying this. After everything that had happened, after all the years of being ignored, suddenly I'm supposed to need them? Mom, I don't need them, I said, a little sharper than I meant to. I've been fine on my own. I'm in school. I'm working. I've built my own life. They haven't been there for me, so why should I be there for them now? She sighed, and I could tell she was getting frustrated. Look, I'm not saying what they did was right, but sometimes you have to be the bigger person. Holding on to all this resentment is only going to hurt you in the long run. There it was again. Another person telling me to just let it go like it was so easy. Like years of neglect and being treated like an outsider in my own family could just be forgotten because family. Mom, this isn't about resentment, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's about respect. They've never respected me, and I'm not going to keep letting them walk all over me just because we're related. I've spent too long trying to be the bigger person, and it's gotten me nowhere. She didn't say anything for a minute, and I could hear her thinking it over. I hoped, for a second, that maybe she'd finally understand. But then she said the last thing I expected. You know, your dad's right, she said quietly. You've always been so stubborn. You never let anyone in. That's why things are like this. I was stunned. Stubborn? Me? I'd been bending over backward for years trying to fit into a family that never wanted me, and now I was the stubborn one? Are you serious right now? I asked, my voice shaking with disbelief. I'm the one who's been stubborn? I'm the one who's wrong here? I'm just saying, she replied, her voice calm like she was giving me some kind of life lesson. If you don't learn to let people in, you're going to end up alone. That was it. The final straw. I couldn't believe that even my mom, the one person who should have understood what I'd been through, was blaming me for everything. Mom, if letting people in means getting treated like garbage, then yeah, maybe I will end up alone, I snapped. But at least I won't be miserable. I'm done being the one who has to make everything better. If they want to fix things, that's on them, not me. She didn't say anything after that. I think she realized she'd pushed too far, but honestly, I didn't care anymore. I was done. With all of it. I gotta go, I said, cutting the conversation short before she could say anything else. Laura. But I didn't wait for her to finish. I hung up and just sat there, staring at my phone, trying to wrap my head around the fact that even my own mom was siding with them. At that moment, I realized something. I didn't need their approval. Not from my dad, not from Jessica, and not even from my mom. I'd spent too long trying to get people to see me, to value me, and all it had done was make me feel worse. So yeah, maybe I was stubborn. Maybe I was shutting people out. But if that meant protecting myself from getting hurt again, then so be it. I'd rather be alone and happy than surrounded by people who didn't really care about me. And with that, I finally felt like I could move on. For real this time.